Crank up the volume and get ready for real-world bird hunting by listening to the Wingmen podcast by Eastman's. Now your host, Todd Helms.
We are live. Hey guys, Todd Helms here with another episode of the Wingmen podcast. I'm pretty sure that this is episode 7, and today I have the great and powerful, to steal Joe Rogan's line, Brandon Trentham. Brandon has written a bunch of blogs for us on the Wingmen side of things. You see him in the emails that we do, in our Wing Beats newsletter. You see Brandon featured in there. You can find his blogs on our website. And we're going to visit today a little bit about some of those blogs and what Brandon does, what makes Brandon Trentham tick. Brandon, how's it going, man?
Todd, man, I'm just super excited to be here. We're just kind of rocking and rolling. If we'd have done this a few months ago, this would have felt weird, but feels like the whole world is online now, so this just kind of feels natural.
I know. And dude, we live under a rock out here in Wyoming, so we're still doing stuff the old-fashioned way with like handshakes and no masks.
I love it. You can come down to Oklahoma and there'll be people putting for sale signs in your yard if you're like that.
No, I mean, we never ran out of meat in the grocery store. Of course, most of us have freezers full of elk and ducks and geese anyway, but I feel bad for everybody else around the country. You know, I've got some family that lives in a major metropolitan area in Louisville, and man, they're struggling.
Yeah,
and they've been struggling for a long time, and it's living life there is ugly, and it's not like that out here, man. I mean, yeah, we've been hurting for jobs. A lot of people lost their jobs, got laid off, and businesses have been impacted. It's impacted the whole country, but man, we've been fortunate in comparison to other places. So yeah, but I agree with you. This platform feels more and more natural all the time. Oh, so how's it going? Everything good down there in Oklahoma? You guys ramping up for, what do you got? What's your first season coming up?
Well, everything's going pretty well. I was just pumped that we got to get our turkey season in this year. I know that it got kind of sketchy, and I think Nebraska and a few other places kind of shut it down, especially for out-of-staters, and we actually got to have turkey season, which was great. Doesn't mean I had any luck. I didn't kill a bird this year. So I guess it didn't matter either way. It was more of the experience. So pretty stoked that we got to do that. Our Oklahoma Wildlife Department did a great job kind of keeping everybody safe, but still allowing some sliver of normalcy. As far as for the fall, everything's looking pretty normal for everything in state. We're getting out. We've got some leases that are mainly watersheds and a couple of sloughs and a few fields. So we're able to get out, and we're starting to work on keeping some dams good to go and keeping our water under control. So we're gearing up for what feels kind of normal, I guess, for a season. But I know we're going to have, one of my favorite things for the outdoors is just being around people. I mean, you can tell that
Right.
from the way that I write. Like, for me, what I love about the outdoors is the actual like memories and the experiences and the friendships, and obviously killing birds makes those better. But I'm just nervous that this year, like physically, our preparation is normal, but I'm just nervous that this year is just going to be odd because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the rules are going to be at that point. So we're getting ready, but I don't know, man.
Yeah, it's definitely got a different feel to it. Like I said, we're pretty blessed out here in Wyoming. It's pretty much a hands-off state, but our same deal, man. We had turkey hunts planned for South Dakota, which we probably still could have done, but our kind of hit a snag there with, should we go, should we not go, is it going to shut down? And it turned out in hindsight we could have gone, but we chose to stay close to home. Montana, we had the place we were going to be hunting in Montana. Actually, Montana ended up closing, but that hunt didn't work out. When we had plans for Nebraska, that got shut down. And so I had all these turkey hunts planned for 2020 and nothing. I ended up doing a general turkey tag. Thank God. I did
Right.
a general turkey tag here in the state of Wyoming, in our home state. And we have some really good turkey hunting in select areas within the state, and was able to get on some birds and get it done. Actually we got a really cool video coming out. We probably won't release it till right before turkey season next year, but it's actually the intern. I took him with me, and we got a bird the first day. Got on a gobbler within an hour of getting the tents, because we did a tent camp and all that stuff. And bird, as we're setting up camp, this bird's gobbling down in this bottom of this drainage. And I looked at him and I was like, "We're gonna kill that bird." And he kind of like, yeah, whatever. And we did. We snuck down in there, got set up, and took about an hour and a half of sweet talk. But I finally got him over to me and got him killed on camera. And I was like, "All right, now we need to build a story." And the story ended up being the intern's first bird. And it took us a day and a half, but we got it done. And it was cool. We laid down a lot of cool footage, and I've got some early morning footage. The morning he actually filled his tag, we figured out the fly down out of this roost was over a big canyon, and I thought maybe they were pitching down on the one side, and they weren't. They were pitching all the way over the other side of the canyon, which is a long ways. And so the next morning, after we watched them do it the first morning, we took a gamble and we went over and got underneath them in that spot, and they flew right into our laps. I mean, they literally, I've got birds, the camera set up, running, and it's just barely light, and the birds start pitching down right in the camera frame at like 15, 20 yards.
That's insane.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome. We had 2 gobblers land, and he couldn't get a crack at the first one because there was some brush and stuff, but the second one he put the hammer on. That was his first turkey ever, and so that's gonna be a pretty cool story, no doubt.
I can't wait to see that footage.
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty awesome. But I'm with you, because the social aspect of hunting it's so vital to wing shooting. I don't care if it's upland, if it's turkey, if it's waterfowl. Any form of wing shooting is social by nature.
Absolutely.
And that's what makes it. Because I don't know, out here in Wyoming, our seasons we don't really get birds until after our big game seasons are over. We have a few birds that are local that we can bust up with our first, we call it the first split. And it's kind of early. It's the closest thing we have to like an early teal season. And we do shoot a lot of teal and gaddies, and we do get some shovelers, and of course there's mallards too. But that season, those birds don't last. They're not around real long. And then we get some cold weather in October, and then they're gone. But our flights haven't shown up yet. We're still far enough south where our flights don't show up until, late November into December, January, probably similar to you guys in Oklahoma, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we have a September resident goose and teal season, and dude, I mean, almost, obviously I'm playing it up a little bit, but you can hardly tell the difference between a goose and a mosquito on those hunts. It's awful. It's just literally brutal. Those are some of those hunts where you just take your shirt off and you don't even care if they flare. Like, it is just too damn hot. And it's kind of the same way. We get a few good shoots in, and then those birds kind of bust up and move on, and it's Thanksgiving time before it really heats up here in Oklahoma. But I mean, we get to hunt geese well on into February here, so we get quite a few days out in the field and some good hunts.
Cool. Yeah, it's the same. It's the exact same here. It's the exact same way. And so the cool thing about that is we've got all our big game seasons. Obviously when you hear Wyoming, you think, oh, elk hunting, mule deer hunting, pronghorns. We are known for our big game hunting, and rightly so. But there's a little bit of wing shooting to be done here too, in small select spots.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's nothing like some of the major flyway states. You get over in the Dakotas, and obviously that's out of this world, and things like that up north in Canada, or some of the stuff down south, and some of the flights they get.
Oh yeah.
But it can be good. But the nice thing about it is, and I'm trying to dovetail back to the social aspect, is so much of big game hunting is quiet. It's intense. It's focused. It's you might only get one crack
Right.
at a bull elk that fall, and you got to be prepared to make that count. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's you and nature. It's solitude. It's solidarity.
Or it's you and one other guy, or maybe another guy. Small groups. Maybe some horses if you're fortunate. But yeah, honestly, I started taking. We've got so many grizzlies here that I started bringing my dog, my Mackinaw, who you see in the videos. He's my bear dog. He serves double duty, and he actually last year on an elk hunt in grizzly country, he actually let us know that we had a bear, and he got all growly and hackles up and tail all sickle tail, real dominant, aggressive, and he nose in the wind, and sure enough, about 30 minutes later, we had a bear walk literally almost right up to us. But we knew we were ready for it because we had the dog. So yeah, when you see him on those videos, he's more than just a duck dog. He's a family dog, and he's a bear dog too, if you will. But that social aspect is so different because big game's so serious, it's so intense, and it's fun. And elk camp is a blast, but there's nothing like sitting in a duck blind or a goose pit or an A-frame or layouts and just hooting and hollering and carrying on and just having a good time and being able to cut up, let loose. If you screw one group of geese up, guess what? There's probably going to be 2 or 3 more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love how you in your blogs that you are able to capture some of that. Your first blog, and I want you to talk about a little bit. Tell our listeners a little bit about how social media overhauled the outdoors. That's a great blog, and again, these blogs will be linked in the description in this podcast. You'll be able to check those out. It'll link you back to the Wingmen webpage, and you'll be able to read them. But Brandon, what was your impetus? What was your idea in writing and starting to write that? Because it's a really unique blog, and it's done really well for us for Wingmen. And I tip my hat to you, and I got to say thank you for letting us put that up. But tell us a little bit about the idea behind that.
Well, thank you so much for the encouragement. For me, so like my real job, my day job, and I'm probably one of the least professional outdoorsmen you'll have on here. My day-to-day job is, I work at the church and I'm a student pastor. And
Cool.
Which is really cool because I get to invest in the lives of the next generation, and I get to use what I love, the outdoors, to establish those connections with students and with families and dads, and it's a really cool opportunity. But I about 2 years ago, I just started really realizing how even in the church world, we've kind of taken this negative approach to social media, and it's kind of like a lot of what you hear about social media is how it has hurt us and how it has changed us, how we don't spend time with our kids, and we're not good parents, and we're bad husbands, and all of these things because of social media. And that's actually what made me write that an article about how social media overhauled the outdoors, because like for me, the social aspect of what we do in the blind, and especially, like you said, pursuing waterfowl and upland, what we do is a part of who we are and a part of how we interact with others. And so I always try to use every hunting experience to get new people involved and to further that narrative of, it's not just dead animals on social media. We're really trying to be better husbands, better fathers, for the ladies that get involved, better moms, better sisters, wives, whatever. We really are trying to become better at who we were intended and created to be through our experiences in the outdoors. And I wanted to write that article because, I think social media can be one of our greatest tools in doing that. I don't think it's always a negative. I think we can leverage social media to further the narrative of what we try to do as outdoorsmen, which is just enjoy creation and bringing others along with us, just making memories. So that's kind of where I came from when I started writing that.
Well, I I think you nailed it in that article. I remember when I read it to edit the article, it set me back on my heels a little bit, because you're exactly right. I think that as a society, as a culture, especially in hunting and anything that kind of deals with youth too,
Yeah,
we have a tendency to demonize social media. You're spending too much time on your phone. Put the phone down. No. Pay attention to what's going on around you, which is true. But on the other hand, I think that it is a powerful tool. And
right.
I loved in that article and in what you just said, how you capture, if we don't capture this younger generation, we don't get them hooked and loving this, it's going to go away. We're only a generation or two from this being gone forever if we're not careful, if we don't do a good job of passing it on. And social media is a pretty powerful tool to help us create, like you said, build a narrative or create an image that's really positive, and it looks like a lot of fun. And you're right, it's more than just piles. And I love piles. I mean,
For
don't
sure.
get me wrong. I don't know a waterfowler or a bird hunter that doesn't love a heavy strap and big piles at the end of the day. But there's so much more to it, and I love seeing on the different social media accounts, guys celebrating the moments, celebrating the little moments, whether it's cutting up and laughing in the blind, or I'm looking at a picture right now of yours, one of your photographs there. I'm not sure who it is. Somebody standing on top of a dog box in the back of a truck, taking a picture of looks like a moment, and
Oh yeah.
that somebody's taking a picture of that, and it's like, that looks like fun. I want to be there. I wish I was there. And I think you're right. I think social media has the ability to portray that and to help tell that story. So we get 10, 12, 13, 14-year-old kids, or even young adults, and we get them and they go, man, that looks like a ball. I
Absolutely.
want to go do that.
Absolutely. I don't consider myself to be a golfer by any means. Like, I'm totally the guy that you laugh at on the course that throws a putter into the pond. But every time I go golfing, I just think about that with that first tee box or whatever in front of the clubhouse. I'm wearing Sika pants and a Sika button up. I have no business being out there, and I'm hacking on some eBay clubs, right? And I'm gonna swing as hard as I can, and I'm gonna send it 2 holes over, but I'm going to have a good time doing it. Well, at the clubhouse, you've got all those guys looking out and kind of scouring at you because you're not the next PGA pro.
Right.
Well, what does that make me want to do? Well, it makes me not want to go golf, right? Because I don't fit in, or I don't look like them, or I'm not good enough or whatever. And it's kind of the same way with hunting. If we're not careful, people aren't going to pick up our sport anymore, because if we find ourselves scoffing at people, that could be, I hate those memes that you see going around this time of year where they're like, oh, everybody's coming out of the woodwork wanting to go on a hunt with me, and they make fun of the people that want to go with you because you're good at it or that's what you do. I hate those memes, because you should be celebrating that. You should be excited. You should be taking those people and teaching them how to get involved with the sport, because the more we sit at the clubhouse and scoff, the worse our public opinion of hunters and what we do is going to be.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it's, there's it's a balancing act between maintaining that tradition,
Right.
of like, this is how it's done, this is what we do, and teaching that tradition with an allowance for innovation. Waterfowling today looks very, very different than waterfowling when I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
First of all, our gear is so much better than it used to be. But second of all, it was like, waterfowling wasn't something that, where I grew up, yeah, people shot ducks, but the really serious hardcore waterfowlers, man, they were like this little club of their own. And you
Mhm.
had to like earn your way into that. And you didn't just break into it. And it was, I don't know, they were hardcore. I guess it's always kind of been a hardcore pursuit. use that word term loosely, I guess, but they were not as inclusive
For sure.
as I think they probably should have been. But culturally, it was something that was much more expected. You know, if you were a young man in the area I grew up in northern Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula, you hunted.
Absolutely.
You hunted. I mean, that's just what you did. And if you didn't, it was kind of like, well, what's wrong with you? You know, that's not the case anymore. You know, a lot of people don't have access. They don't have the opportunities. And I think you're right. I think if we do stand back and like you said, scoff or make it inaccessible, man, we're shooting ourselves in the foot, literally and figuratively, you know. And I agree with what you're saying about social media can show that other side, that lighthearted side. I love the pictures that I see. I saw an Instagram story last night, and I don't remember who it was now. I wish I should have paid more attention, but I was just kind of thumbing through some stuff. And after my kids went to bed, and this Instagram story came across, and it was this dude cooking breakfast burritos in the duck blind.
Oh
And
yeah.
he had his little, you know, a lot of people do that. We do that a little bit, but he had hauled out this like skillet, this like griddle, and he was making sausage and eggs and then throwing it all in a tortilla. And dude, I'm looking at that going, what 12-year-old kid wouldn't go for that?
Absolutely.
You mean I get to eat a breakfast burrito out and while I'm, you know, that's the side of it that social media portrays so well.
Absolutely. It's the memories. That's what makes the memories. You know, after you've killed, you know, you'll remember your first duck and you'll remember your first goose and you'll remember all that. But once you've got a few birds under your belt, what actually makes hunts memorable, you know, outside of another thing that social media provides, our ability to scroll back through backlogged hunts, right? But take social media out of the game, and the reason you remember hunts, the reason you have campfire stories are memories. They're cooking burritos, they're falling through the ice, they're chasing down a wounded whenever the dog wouldn't get it. You know, it's those stories where things don't go perfectly as planned that create those memories that bring us together as outdoorsmen and outdoorswomen, right? That's why we remember the trips. It's the experience.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's funny, you know, in my other life before all of this, I was an English teacher, middle school, high school English teacher, and I was a coach as well. And I remember a few years back before I became the editor here and we fired up Wingmen and started doing all this fun stuff. I remember reading a stat. Social media was just getting to be a big deal. Instagram was just kind of brand new in its infancy. The data said that people consume more written material in today's world than at any time in history. Now, it's not novels and it's not necessarily great big books or scrolls, but it's constant. And if we think about the amount of data, the amount of information that we are bombarded by on a daily basis, yeah, we are the most literate, read generation, however, whatever you want to say, this era ever. There's never been a time when you've got more information both at your disposal and being jammed down your throat. And I look at social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube as those are the photo albums for today's generation. Those are the
Absolutely.
modern day photo albums. And it's when I started looking at it in that light that I kind of changed my perspective. And I was like, yeah, actually, that's really cool. Now, is there a lot of stuff on social media that I just shake my head at and go, come on, you know, I'm done. Yes, there is. There is. It's like anything. You got to sift through the noise to find, you know, you got to separate the wheat from the chaff. You know what I mean? But I tell you what, I do think you're spot on. I think we can use it as a cool tool, as a platform. not just to get kids hooked on it, but to celebrate what we love. How else are you going to like you said, how else are you going to remember that epic retrieve that your dog did? I I think back to last season, and Mackinac had one of his better retrieves that he ever had on a goose, and it was epic. I mean, it was amazing, and we got it on video.
That's awesome.
And I put it up, and it's got, I don't know, 50,000, 60,000 views on Facebook.
That's awesome.
And it's like people connected with it. I was able to share that story, and people were like, "That's really cool." And if I wouldn't have had that, I wouldn't be able to share it. And it would just be me and the couple guys that were there, the ones that would remember it. Anyway, I appreciate you writing these blogs. I appreciate you writing that blog in particular, because it's different. It's a different way of looking at things, and I think it's an important way of looking at social media, because we can either embrace it and use it positively, or we can, be those guys standing at the clubhouse scoffing.
Right. And the reality is it's not going anywhere.
No, it's not going away. No, it's not going away. So you might as well figure out a positive use for it, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things, Brandon, I mean, you're a great writer, and you have been awesome to work with on the Wingmen blog side of things, writing. But I know another one of your passions is photography.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about how you got started with that. You always have a camera in the blind with you, because man, you take some pretty top notch, next level photographs.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, if I were going to be honest, the way it really started is, so I've been married to my wife Eden for about 5 years now. And honestly, and I told her whenever we were talking, because I started dating her about 6 months before she knew I existed. And so once she finally figured that I existed, I told her, I was like, I'm going to do everything that I can to love you and treat you right. But there's something different about waterfowl hunters. And I don't know how to explain it, but we're a different breed. And, she was pretty hard on me that first season. And she was like, you need to figure out if this is truly your passion. She's like, you need to figure out some way to leverage it into being more than just a hobby. And the reality is, I would encourage everyone to do that as well. That doesn't mean that you have to try and make money off of it, but I think a lot of times we forget, like, the reason as men or even women, the reason that we like the outdoors is we get to really feel like we're challenging creation. We really get to see how do we find ourselves in the outdoors, and how do we defeat it, or how do we leverage deception so that we can have success, right? And it's more than just like a hobby, like as if we're going out to golf or something. It's our ability to be natural and to compete. And so for me, I really took that calling that she kind of gave me and figured out, well, how can I make this more than my Saturday out with the boys? How can I leverage this for the natural drive and ambition that I feel each time I load up in the truck? And for me, it was behind the lens and leveraging, how can I tell the story so that other people can get involved? And for me, that was capturing moments, and for me, that was capturing memories. And so I got my first camera, and I spent like probably 4 weeks just YouTubing like what the buttons were.
Nice.
Yeah, I had there was like quite literally, I had zero photography knowledge or experience. Like, the only camera I had ever worked before my first like trip to the field with a camera was like an iPhone at family gatherings. Like, I literally had never used a camera, and I was just like, you know what, I should do this. And so I got my camera and I just started taking pictures. And my first year, those photographs were awful, and I couldn't figure out how to tell a story. There was no emotion. It was literally just like pile pick after pile pick, and it was like, cool, I went on another hunt and killed this many ducks. And it wasn't a passion yet. And so I just stuck with it. And that's what I would encourage the listeners today. Like, whatever you decide to leverage in the outdoors, stick with it. Fly fishing or whatever, tie your own flies or go buy a camera or practice calling. But whatever you do, stick with it, because you're not going to be perfect overnight. And that's kind of been the story of my photography. I just fake it till you make it and keep trying to tell stories.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Well, you do a good job with it. It's one of those things where I obviously we follow each other on social media, and I get to see kind of what you do, and it's always interesting to see what story you're telling next, because for a guy that had to YouTube how to use a camera, you do a pretty darn good job these days, I tell you what. So
Well, thanks,
you're
Tom.
you're welcome to come up and hang out anytime with the Wingmen crew and take pictures and hunt. I tell you what. But no, that's good for your wife to, pressure you a little bit.
Yeah,
How often in life do we not do something because there's nobody there to push us, and we don't necessarily see what maybe an outside perspective would be, like, oh, well, yeah, I really like this, but it's just kind of what I do. And then somebody else comes along and goes, man, I think you should figure this out or do this or try this. And you try it, and it's your next big thing. It's your next passion.
absolutely. I mean, it's so whenever fear is what drives us, we're gonna find ourselves holed up and terrified to try anything. And so, for me, it was my wife. For other people, it's their parents or maybe a teacher. Or I love that you were an English teacher, because like there, yeah, obviously I love writing, and for me, my English teacher in ninth grade was one of those people in my life too. And so I think that there are different people that come into our life at different times to point us into those directions and to challenge us. And so if you don't heed that call, you miss these opportunities I would have never gotten to meet you if I wouldn't have listened to her. And I'm thankful for
Sure.
our friendship and all of that. And it's all a result of just being pushed a little bit.
No, I completely agree. I had a saying, and I still like to use it, but I got to use it more when I was teaching and coaching, but it was nothing grows in a comfort zone,
Oh yeah,
and it's not an original saying of mine by any stretch of the imagination, but it's so true. We grow the most as people in places where we're not comfortable. When we step outside of the known, we are forced to change. We are forced to adapt. And sometimes it works out great. Sometimes we fall flat on our face. But if we're doing it right, we're learning something from it.
absolutely.
And, I love, this is one of the reasons I love hunting new areas. I love hunting with new people, because I try to learn something from every time I'm out, whether it's, okay, the birds did this. Why did they do that? How can I adapt to take advantage of that behavior? Or, man, I've never seen somebody set a goose spread quite like that.
Absolutely.
Guess what? I'm going to try that. And the first couple times I do it, it might not work at all, or it might work out great. But I had the ability to step outside of my comfort zone and look and pay attention and see. We just don't grow if we don't learn from those people around us, and I don't know. I think that's really cool. So good for you to take that call and learn how to do the hard thing, the photography. And how amazing is it that you can learn how to get to where you are with a camera now, which I mean, you're very good at what you do with the camera, to be able to get there by watching YouTube videos.
Right. And YouTube is social media too. It all
Yeah.
goes back to that blog. Like, and once again, man, anybody that hasn't read that blog, go read it, because it seriously challenges you to think about how we use all of the tools that we have at our disposal. Like, I think about, like, all the heavy hitters in the outdoor industry that we all look back to, and they were, you know, game changers in this industry. And just think about the tools that they had versus the platform that we have today and the audience. Like just getting to meet you and my friends, like we network nationwide with outdoorsmen every single year on social media, and that wasn't even a reality, 20 years ago.
No, 10 years ago, man.
Yeah.
I mean, there was Facebook, but no, people didn't use Facebook like they do today
No.
or like they do Instagram. Um, and there's then you got Twitter and TikTok. Whether or not they'll make TikTok illegal, who knows? But it's one of those things that the networking is unbelievable.
It's insane.
It's crazy. I'm sitting here talking to you, and I get to follow along with what you guys are doing down in Oklahoma, and same thing. I'm getting to talk to I don't know people down south and in different flyways, and I get to keep tabs on everything that's going on all across the country. And quite honestly, we're going to start on it. We're going to start implementing something. I'm not going to spill too many beans, but we're going to use that networking here in the future, hopefully this year, a little differently and a little more effectively as season progresses, to kind of keep tabs on some stuff and bring that to the readers and bring that to the social media audiences and the the folks that follow us, because having the ability to jump on a Skype call or listen to a podcast or just follow a social media account, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And one of the things, there is a pitfall to it. One of the things that I think we do need to be careful of with it is you start looking in the mirror with it.
Mm-hmm.
You start comparing yourself to what guys over here are doing or what this person is doing. And one of the things that we have to remember with social media is it's snapshots. They're moments. They're moments. And whether it's the epic burrito in the duck blind or the pile pick or whatever it may be, it's just a snapshot. And if you keep that in mind, man, that's cool, because you get to share in those moments. But if you start comparing yourself, like you got to, maybe you're struggling in your flyway or in your area, and guys are posting pile picks left and right, and you're going, oh, and you start grumbling, that can affect your mindset pretty bad.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For example, even in Oklahoma, you hear a lot about us being the best kept secret in waterfowl hunting. And I mean, if you watch some of these hunting shows and folks that come to Oklahoma, you're going to see these huge spins of little geese. And I mean, just these outrageous piles, and post after post, tagging Oklahoma as this mecca. And, part of that's true. Like if you head out west, it is absolutely great. But my part of Oklahoma is not that part. And now I'm blessed with opportunities through some of the stuff we do with More Than a Calling and some of those guys to get to go hunt out west. But my home base is the eastern part, Tulsa, in Oklahoma. And so a lot of our hunting is big geese, and we do get a lot of mallards, but a lot of it's big geese. And if we put down 10 or 15, I mean, that's a pretty solid hunt. And then if I'm sitting in the blind looking at some of those guys out west and they're having, 100 bird plus days, it's really easy for us to forget why we're doing it. And it's really easy for us to compare. It's like, oh, well, my 10 big honkers don't compete with those 100 little, specks or whatever. And it does. You can all of a sudden get disappointed about one of your best hunts of the year. So you got to watch that.
Yeah, absolutely. Those big spins of little geese, that, man alive. Growing up where I grew up, we would get groups, flights of little geese. Mostly the little geese we saw were the small ones, the Hutchinsons.
Yeah.
The little guys and taverners. And I mean, they're hardly any bigger than the Drake Mallard,
right?
And we wouldn't get big groups of them. They would be mixed in with groups of Canadas. The not giants, but with the migrating Canadas out of Hudson Bay and James Bay,
Right.
out of Canada. And so we'd usually kill half dozen or so a season. So it was always neat. And then to be able to watch what those guys in Western Oklahoma and Texas and some of over in that area are doing on those big groups of little geese.
Yeah.
Whoa.
It's insane.
That would be so much fun.
It is. It's crazy, man.
Yeah. Hey, you said something a minute ago, and you're working on a project that I personally find to be really important. And it's something that, quite honestly, when I asked you to be on the podcast, I had intended to ask you about. And honestly, it slipped my mind until you mentioned it. So I'm glad you did. But you're More Than a Calling project. I think that is so cool. And I kind of want you to tell us a little bit more about it, because I'm not going to be the only person out there that thinks it's awesome. So tell us about More Than a Calling.
For sure. So More Than a Calling, I got hooked up with the founder of More Than a Calling. His name's Cody Goff, and I got hooked up with him a couple years back, and we had some things in common and some beliefs in common, and we had kind of both grown up in church, and ultimately there are ways that we found that it felt like the church wasn't necessarily for us all the time. And maybe we were kind of the ones that stuck out, not to toot my own horn, but like you got the manly guys that are like killing things on the weekend, and it's hard to find a Sunday school class that's welcoming to that, I've still got blood on my fingernails as I'm trying to find this book in the New Testament, and
No, you could pull into just about any church service in rural Wyoming in the fall, and there'll be a deer or an elk in the back of somebody's truck. So a little different out here, but I get you. I hear you, man.
Yeah.
I hear you.
And so I teamed up with him, and he had kind of started More Than a Calling, and I kind of came alongside and got to write with him, and we got involved with a handful of really cool guys, and within a few years we had reached like 10,000 followers on Instagram, and it had kind of gotten pretty big and blown up, and we just kind of had a trout fishing trip. It was actually my first time to fly fish, which was kind of fun, and we literally sat down and just tried to redefine, so what is more than a calling, and what are we doing? Because we've got this huge platform on social media, and we're posting a few cool pictures, but whose lives are we impacting? How are we engaging people? How are we creating relationships? And so and honestly, our answer was we weren't. And so we kind of reevaluated and figured out our goal is to make being a Christian or whatever not super taboo in the outdoor industry, right? It's how can you have church conversations or whatever in the blind, and how do you not make it this like sissy thing, right? How do you make it cool, and how do you make it something where we can talk about what God did in our life? And out of that, we birthed the project called The Flyby, and that's a weekly email, and you can subscribe to that on the More Than a Calling website, and it's a weekly email with just a quick little spiritual insight through the sport of waterfowl hunting. And we've got season 2 coming out this hunting season. It'll be ready to order hopefully in time to be a stocking stuffer. And it's really been a neat opportunity to work with some stellar dudes in the outdoor industry that are not only bettering the sport of waterfowl hunting, but they're also kind of, pushing people to be better husbands, dads, friends, and just really trying to impact our influence as outdoorsmen.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I will make sure that we put a link to More Than a Calling down in the description as well. So if if you're a Christian, you're a hunter, that's something that you should be checking out, that you should be looking at, because I think it's really cool, and I applaud you guys for doing that. And if you're not and you're curious, the link will be there. Go check it out, and get a hold of Brandon Trentham if you have any questions. He can help you out. I mean,
absolutely.
I think that when I grew up, there was no problem with being a manly man in church. It was a little different, and it's still that way in a lot of places in the country. But I think, unfortunately, that's a disservice to men. What the church, some of the things that have happened in the church,
Yeah.
We've stepped away from that, and I think it's time that's revisited, and I think it's time that the roles of males in the church, of strong male leaders in the church, needs to be reexamined. They need to be stepping up, and now more than ever. And I think things like More Than a Calling are awesome, and I really appreciate you guys doing that. But, well, Brandon, what do you got on the docket for this year? I know you said that a few things are going to look different, but what hunts do you have coming up that you're excited about?
Yeah, I'm really excited. So I spend most weeks hunting with Southern Flat Outdoors here in Oklahoma, and we're just right outside of Tulsa. So we kind of hit those business guys that maybe don't want to drive, 2.5 hours west,
Sure.
and for those big spins. And so we've got a lot of cool repeat clients that we get to just keep growing those relationships, watching their kids get older. It's pretty cool just to see that repeat each year. And then with More Than a Calling, we go out to Falco in Western Oklahoma every year, and I always look forward to that hunt. It's called Purpose Weekend, and that's going to be coming up in February. So we should get some cool footage. Hopefully, we'll get some snow and get to put down some lessers in the snow. That I'm dying for pictures in the snow because we don't get a lot in Oklahoma. So that's what I'm praying for. So you guys can join me in praying for that. And then ultimately, I'm looking forward to. My wife has not been on a waterfowl hunt yet. She's been on some.
What?
I know, I know, I know. She's been on some dove hunts. She actually has killed a turkey, and this summer she went bow fishing for the first time, and she smoked like the first fish she hit was a little bitty needle nose gar. So I mean, like, she's spot on.
Nice.
She can shoot. So I'm hoping to get her out. She doesn't like the cold, so I'm looking forward to getting her out maybe for that resident goose season we were talking about. So honestly, that's the hunt that I'm most excited about. Just getting to see her take part in what is so important to me. So that's probably my most the hunt that I'm looking forward to most for this season.
Cool. Yeah, it's nice to live in places where there's opportunity. I think back on growing up and always had opportunity right out my back door to hunt
Yeah.
ducks, geese, upland birds, you name it. And it honestly, if that opportunity would not have existed, hunting would have looked a lot different.
Absolutely.
My dad was an avid hunter. My whole family hunts and fishes, and so there's no doubt I would have grown up with it. But I don't think I would have had the love and the passion for it that I do if I couldn't have just walked out my back door. Running a trap line as a kid and hunted ducks and geese literally in the agricultural fields right around my house.
Yeah.
And I think if I wouldn't have had that, it would have looked a lot different. So those local hunts that we get to do, man, I still love those. I still love those, and we're fortunate here that we get to live in a place that we can do that same thing. And I can take my wife and my two little girls out. Same thing. We did a hunt last year that we released a Father's Day podcast where a bunch of guys here in the office got all of our kids, and three of us have 5-year-old girls. They're all the
That's
same
awesome.
age. And dude, there was more pink and purple in that goose blind that day. But it was the best hunt of the season. And yeah, we quit early. We could have killed. I think there were six. We could have killed a 6-man limit,
Yeah.
but we settled. I think we stopped 5 or 6 shy because it was like we'd had enough. The kids were having a riot. It was a beautiful, winter day that was actually warm, and best hunt of the year. So
Oh yeah.
those hunts where you get family involved and they're local, and man, those are always fun to look forward to for sure. But
Absolutely. That was some of my favorite stuff last year was just coming home with birds. My daughter, Aspen, she is 3. and she would just run out and hop into the bed of the truck and just start playing with them. You know, she just wanted to
Awesome.
touch every feather. And I'll send you a picture later on because it's just so cute. You know, it's not, and it's funny. The photographs that I love are not always the highest quality. This is just a cell phone foggy picture, but I mean, her just looking at the feathers, like that's the memory in and of itself. So that's kind of what I love about watching our kids get involved.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. It's I take them every year, and it doesn't matter. I always manage to get them out, and it seems like the more I get them out there, the more they love it and the more they want to go. So those things are important. But well, Brandon, I really appreciate you being on. I appreciate you sharing everything. You know, talking about being willing to talk about more than a calling with us. I appreciate you contributing to what we do here at Wingmen, and I look forward to continuing that relationship. And I've only got one question for you.
All right.
If you had to pick one, are you going to go with ducks or geese?
I
And why?
I gotta go with greenheads. I've got to go. There's just something about mallards crashing through treetops into a slough that, like, I just can't help. I still giggle today every time they walk up. So I got to say ducks, man.
All right. All right. Nothing wrong with that. That's a question that you guys, you listeners, are going to hear me ask probably just about every single guest that we have, because I think it's an interesting question, and I think it helps show the scope of North American waterfowling because there's so many opportunities. And so, Brandon, I appreciate your time, man, and I look forward to continuing to work with you on different projects with Wingman, and I look forward to seeing what your social media exploits too, man. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, Todd. It's been great to hang out.
All right. Well, hey guys, that's a wrap on episode 7 with Brandon Trentham talking about more than a calling and social media and a million other things. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned. We've got a lot more coming your way.